So why don't we go ahead and get started with the session that's specific about youth. It's entitled Youth Conflict and Afghanistan's Future. I already introduced myself, but I will do it again. My name is Sandeep Badal. I'm a Senior Program Associate with the Environmental Change and Security Program, as well as the Global Health Initiative, which focuses on maternal health here at the Woodrow Wilson Center. I do want to inform you all, make a note about today's session. It's being webcasted live, so when we do come to the discussion portion, I'd ask that if folks have questions to use a mic and to introduce yourself and your affiliation. I'm now going to actually turn it over to my esteemed colleague, Michael Kugelman, who will be moderating this session. You do have his bio in front of you, but he's our senior program assistant, senior program associate. That's my title. You'd think I would have get that one right for the South and Southeast Asia program here at the Woodrow Wilson Center, and one of the co-sponsors of today's event. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Sandeep. I appreciate the kind introduction. Indeed, I am Michael Kugelman, and I look forward to chairing this session. Let me just say that the Environmental Change and Security Program deserves full credit for all the efforts that have gone into this afternoon's conference, and deserves equally full credit for all of its success. The topic of this panel is indeed youth conflict and Afghanistan's future. I'm often struck by the very sharp divide in how Afghanistan and its future prospects are depicted by those outside of Afghanistan and those inside Afghanistan. Generally speaking, perspectives from outside the country tend to be more pessimistic than those coming from inside. Those outside tend to emphasize spiraling instability and the possibility of civil war and of even the Taliban returning to power. Those inside the country take a more nuanced view. They certainly underscore the violence, the conflict, the potential for more of it, as they should. But they also emphasize the improvements made, for example, in girls' education and in the increasingly robust civil society in Afghanistan that comprises many youth activists and that promotes many issues relevant to youth. I think this first panel will certainly offer this more realistic view, more nuanced view, one that certainly acknowledges and addresses the huge problems, but that also highlights some of the reasons to be hopeful. So we're very fortunate to have a very impressive group of speakers with us up here today. You have the bios in front of you, so I'll be very brief as I introduce each of the three. We'll first hear from Richard Sinkata, who is a demographer in residence at the Stimson Center here in Washington. He's a consultant to the Wilson Center's Environmental Change and Security Program. As a political demographer, he conducts analyses for the U.S. intelligence community, and his research focuses on the demographic transition and human migration. And he's published on a number of issues, which you could take a look at in the bio. After Rich, we'll be hearing from Rosie John, who is, as you can tell, not here physically with us. She's joining us live from Kabul via video conference, which we very much appreciate. She's the founder of Rosia's Ray of Hope Foundation and the Zabuli Education Center. She's worked for many years to forge connections between Afghans and Americans. Her life and career have followed a very interesting trajectory. She was born in Afghanistan, though she moved to the U.S. back in 1970 and had a career in local community affairs, though she then moved back to Afghanistan in 2008, where she's developing aid projects for Afghan rug weavers and their families as the country program director for the nonprofit Arzu Incorporated, in addition to her work with Rosia's Ray of Hope. Now, she'll speak second, though her presentation will be preceded by a video, which we will all see before she gives her spoken remarks. And then finally, our third speaker on this panel will be Maiwan Rayab, who is the Deputy Director of Counterpart International in Afghanistan, whose mission is to strengthen Afghan civil society. And before that, he led the Afghanistan Office of Focus Humanitarian Assistance. This is a humanitarian agency affiliated with the very well-respected Aga Khan Development Network. He worked with the Association for Rural Development's USAID-funded Afghanistan Local Governance Assistance Program, as well as a number of other things. He's a prominent youth and civil society activist in Afghanistan, and he's a founding member of Afghanistan 1400, which is a movement aimed at mobilizing and creating a political platform for Afghanistan's new generation. So you did not come here to hear from me, so I will stop talking right now and cede to our panelists. So first, Rich will kick things off.
Thank you, Michael, and good afternoon. I'm very proud to be here, and I don't consider myself an Afghan expert, but I've been able to communicate some things about Afghanistan for the National Intelligence Council and with my work with the Stimson Center. And I have to, when I think back at some of the work I've done with it, I remember my kickoff remarks to a group of U.S. Army doctors about to travel to Afghanistan, where I informed them that at the time, and that was about 2008, that despite the number of battle-related deaths, about 5,000 to 7,000 a year, that maternal mortality, the toll from maternal mortality was about 3 times that number. About 20,000 women were dying every year from pregnancy-related causes. And that put things in perspective, and that's how I launched my speech. And I'm quite happy after seeing the Afghanistan maternal survey that was done in 2010 to see that I cannot say that any longer. That maternal mortality, although it is still the highest in the South Asian region, is at about 4,300 deaths per year. So it's traveled from this 1 out of 9 women being at risk of or dying from maternal mortality in their lifetime to 1 out of 50. That's not where you want to end up, but that's certainly an enormous improvement. And if you were here to hear Mary Ellen Stanton tell the story, it is certainly a program that has had enormous impact in a short time. So I'm having trouble keeping up with those statistics, and I'm proud to say I've been revised. There's also additional stories to be told in under 5 mortality that are really amazing over that short amount of time. But I'm not going to concentrate on these statistics. I think people after me are going to talk a little bit more about that. I'm going to try some big ideas actually out on you, and I guess I can advance it from here. Right. And this is one way to do it, huh? I'm going to start out with other people's big ideas. And they're ideological opinions, but founded in their experience. And this one is from Michael Shore, who in a conference in 2006 in Washington expressed his perspective, and that was, and I'll quote, "Frankly, I've never understood why we give a damn whether a girl goes to school in Afghanistan or not. That's not a national interest of the United States. It's no interest to the United States." Now, I can see in my lifetime that I might have looked at U.S. involvement, particularly after coming out of the military, but not necessarily moved by the military at all. But as a young lad, I might have thought, that makes some sense. Where should we go? Should we be interventionists everywhere? Shouldn't countries take care of themselves, or shouldn't they be taken care of in the region? Now here's another perspective that circulated after 2001, and this is a cartoon by John Deering of the Arkansas Gazette. And if I can read it for you, it says it's a letter to the Taliban, and this is supposed to be the Taliban cloistered away in their caves in the Tora Bora region during that campaign. says, "Give us Osama bin Laden or we'll send your women to college." Now that's funny on several levels, but I think it's deep down funny, and it's deep down, it has to make you think about what kind of changes go on and why those faces seem threatened. Why should they be threatened? And now we could dismiss this all as a disagreement over human rights and where they extend and who they pertain to, and whether this is a Western concept or that somehow these human rights were handed down, and the UN, like Moses, carries these books around, and you're supposed to all get in line. Now, I'm a political demographer, and actually human rights are a little confusing to me because they're an assumption, and I think it's my job to kind of look a little deeper. And I think political demography does that for us, and I'm going to try to go through my logic and come out at the end, and I'm not asking you to agree with all of that I say, but there's some evidence, and I'll try to point out where that evidence is strong, where it's weak, and maybe allude to what it means, at least to me and to other political demographers, hopefully to other people who have been influenced by this type of analysis. Now, the starting place, and many of you have seen this graph before, is what's called the age structural transition. And let's see. It's a graph that shows older people, like myself, down here in the horizontal axis, and along the vertical axis is younger people, 30 years and younger. And in 2010, according to the UN projection, the UN estimates of 2010, all of the countries of the world could be displayed in their proportions of young and old. And when you put them together, you would see this sort of crescent. And if you knew a little bit about their history, you would see that they were actually moving in this direction, downward through this crescent. The youngest countries with the largest group of young people are up here, and the oldest are down here. And here are are states in the middle. And when you take a look at them economically and in terms of their stability, the different measures of political stability, what you see is that, let's see if I can do this. You see that there really is a zone of instability. About 80% of all civil conflicts begin in this region up above 60% of the population being younger under 30. Now, it's about the same as a median age of 25. There's different measures that have been used, and it's been called the Youth Bulge. I like to call it youthfulness of a population. It does mean there's a lot of people in the younger ages, and it does mean that there's a very rapid growth of young people into the working age population. To put that in terms that may be familiar to us, for Afghanistan, workforce growth at the bottom was about 3.5% to 4%, or 3 to 4% over different years over the last 2 decades. And for the US, it's less than 1%, 0.8. So you can imagine a country with difficulties maintaining stability and with educational attainment low and with a limited amount of capital and infrastructure, that's quite a challenge. And with our workforce growth, which is about 0.8%, we ourselves are experiencing challenges employing people. So you can imagine what countries like Afghanistan and other countries with similar workforce growth rates, as in parts of sub-Saharan Africa, particularly the equatorial belt, what their challenges are. Just before starting, without thinking of anything else besides their age structure, they're already in difficulty. So what political demography starts with is actually the discussion of age structure, which is a little bit different than political science, because you might start with actually the details, the ethnicity, the history, the culture, outside influences, political influences, leadership. Political demography starts actually at the other end of the story. It starts looking at these basic challenges and then moves downward. That's not to say that culture and history are unimportant, not at all. It's to say that there are commonalities among those countries that are youthful, and they may be exceedingly strong. So Afghanistan's challenge is already there before all those other factors are added in. Now, being a youthful country doesn't mean that you're lost immediately. It does mean, at least statistically, that there is a high risk of civil conflict, that there is a low probability of attaining very high levels of democracy, as scored by Freedom House. And for countries that do make that grade, and some countries do, we saw Mali do it, we saw Senegal do it recently again, there is a high probability of losing that score. And that's repeated continuously since those ratings were begun. So it's a challenge. Already there's a challenge. It doesn't mean that the challenge is lost, that it cannot be surmounted, but it means that it's not an easy game that has to be played. This is Afghanistan's age structure over the last 30 years, I think, or 20 years, starting in 1990. Very youthful. Median age, probably, if I've lost my place with my statistics, but say around 17, and it's improved particularly over this 20-year period, and this is the UN's latest estimate of Afghanistan's age structures. Still extraordinarily youthful, one of the most youthful in the world. Actually, the Afghanistan mortality survey portrays a bit more hopeful age structure than this one. Now, according to the AMS 2010, fertility is probably around 5.1 children per woman. Now that sounds extraordinarily high, it is, but estimates before that were considerably higher, at least a child higher. As you can see, fertility is distributed unevenly across the country. The estimates range from 5.6 in the eastern area to 4.6 in the Central Highland area. And there is some association you'll see with Pushtun speakers across the country, but there is so far no definitive disaggregation in terms of ethnicity. I like you to take a look at these results, and maybe they'll be shown later on as well and discussed more thoroughly. But what they illustrate is that actually fertility across urban and rural areas is different, but not dramatically so. Wealth, a factor, but across each 20% of the distribution of wealth, not a great, does not create a great set of differentials across that span. What is impressive is the differences in educational attainment and the fertility that's associated with them. Despite the fact, as we well know, that women in Afghanistan do not have enormous opportunities to participate in the workforce. That's quite remarkable. And I don't think we should forget about the sacrifices that Afghanis have made getting girls to school. Teachers, parents, and students. That sacrifice not only pays off with education, but also in family size and maternal health and child health. So let me try to put this into some kind of context in a sort of political demography way of thinking about it. Now, what I've tried to do is to sort of step away from human rights and try to figure out why it is that groups like the Taliban, maybe even traditionalists within country who are holding on to power, why they might impede the progress of girls into school, why they may be against women participating in society in a greater way. What kind of theoretical notion do we have? Do we have to rely on human rights all the time as an argument and just say that, well, they're against human rights and we're for it? And I suggest maybe we don't have to. But what we do know statistically is that youthful populations are risky populations, politically, economically, socially. And that passage to an age structure that is what we might call intermediate, an age structure. I think this one, this might be Brazil, but Tunisia, actually right now Burma, other countries that are on their way, or at least making a run at democracy, some of them that have succeeded long before we ever thought they would. Countries in the Far East like Taiwan and South Korea were at this stage when they, and Indonesia, when they became full-blown liberal democracies. Why it is that that age structure has so much to do with this, well, we're not all that certain. We can't pin it down to statistically, but there's some good indications that, of course, family size has to do with it in terms of the change from youthful to intermediate populations, because fertility is the big driver of age structural change. Now, what's driving fertility? Well, sociologists will tell you that, of course, education and income have a great deal to, are affected by education. And economists will tell you that income has an effect on education, on how much money can be spent on it per person, how much individuals can reallocate for their children. And they also, although they believe in it, perhaps it's a weak effect, the economists are quite certain that that income has a lot to do with family size, although within a generation it's just not obvious, as you might have seen in the AMS survey and its review of the wealth quintiles. Demographers, economic demographers, tell us that, well, in fact, families with few children are able to allocate more per child, makes sense, and then there is a savings effect, and that effect as well might be weak. Nonetheless, what we have is a circulation of feedbacks that go both ways. A coupling of family size, education, particularly for women, income, particularly in terms of participation of women, that is, when it gets going, is pretty hard to stop. So what you have is women's lives and their schedule for childbearing to being at the sort of the crux of that. And it is really no wonder that anyone who wants to stop that from happening would attack women's rights and impede women from becoming involved and actually motivating that. So what I'm suggesting is that it's a little more than human rights issue. It's an issue that when you really take a good look at the demographics and the statistical evidence around conflict and around democratization and around stabilization, that you get the picture that women are a lot more important to politics than we ever gave them credit for. And I'll end actually with talking about a little something called the Youth Bulge dilemma. And this arises largely because women are at the crux of this aspect of development, a broad aspects of development. First of all, if we have long-term goals for that development, women have to be at the center of it, according to this model, if you believe that what political demographers believe. But secondly, if you're, if indeed you want to stop conflict, if you have a conflict that's ongoing and you have a chance to stop it, well, that's exceedingly important as well. You're saving lives, you're getting things back in gear, you're getting, but you're, but what you have to do to end conflict is often to appease men. And basically, and I don't mean that from a pejorative sense, but I mean it from a sense of employing men, often disarming them, getting them back into reintegrating them, and sometimes making compromises when that's concerned. And finally, you come up with a dilemma. That is, whether your short-term goals and your long-term goals are compatible. And I wonder, when I look at Afghanistan situation, if indeed these goals of trying to at least end hostilities in different regions, if that can be compatible ultimately with the goal of moving the age structure ahead, getting to a portion of that age structural transition where states function, because women are so important to getting there. So thank you for your time and for this little trip through theoretical political demography. I'm sorry to put you through a classroom with this, but I wanted to actually expound upon what political demographers are thinking and why they believe that women are at the center of things. Thank you.
The film presentation of today. We'll be hearing from Rosie, John in just a moment, but first we're going to activate this film. Oh, I don't have to do anything, even better. difficulties have been worked out, so apologies for that. Let me just repeat that for those listening to the webcast. Unfortunately, we're having a bit of technical difficulties with the sound of the video, so what we're going to do is hear the presentation from Ms. John first, and then hopefully we can return to the video afterwards. So apologies for that, but Razia, we look forward to hearing from you. You please go ahead.
Good afternoon to all of you. Thank you so much for having me as a part of this discussion group. I think it is very important for us to emphasize what's going on in Afghanistan and with life of girls and what we are going to face in future, really. I've been here for the past, since 2002, I've been coming back and forth to Afghanistan, and since 2008, I've been living here permanently. I have built a girls' school, which is outskirts of Kabul. It's a private school, but it's 100% free, and all the expenses are paid by my non-profit organization, Razia's Ray of Hope, and I'm a Rotarian, and a lot of Rotary clubs from all over the world, and also especially from United States, helps me run the school. It is a great pleasure to be part of this discussion, and I just heard Richard, and he was giving us a lot of information that I don't know, in reality, it really doesn't seem to really make any difference. On paper, the life is so different than when it is, it's really that what people are suffering and what girls and women are suffering, and how I think we are trying to make their life better. It is a great task, and I think in a community when you go and invest for education, it is so important that everybody, all the community, men and women, the leaders, everybody has to really help you. And it is not an easy task, not an easy task for me, not an easy task for anybody else that wants to do something good for the woman. It's always, there are a lot of hurdles, there are a lot of, I think, roadblocks, or because nobody really wants to agree with you 100% when you're doing a project, or you have to really make sure to bring the community with you and emphasize and work with them. I'm very lucky that I have chosen a community that are really not, they never had a school for girls in that area. Not the reason that they didn't want to, but I think nobody really offered them this option. And it took a long time and long effort for me to really work with the community and be with the community to have this girls' school. I have 400 girls. When I started in 2008, I had only 108 girls. And today I have 400 girls. And I have from kindergarten to 8th grade. And this year we have just started 9th grade. So it is a great, great pleasure for me. And believe me, whenever I see these girls and whenever I go to the school and I talk to my students, I can't tell you how pleasure it is for me and how honored I am that my girls are getting education. And one thing that I've made sure, because again, when I ask a little girl who's in kindergarten, why are you learning English? And she tells me, because it's an international language. And that's what I put in their mind. I have 1 hour English every day from kindergarten to 9th grade. And they are learning English. And I'm trying to really show them the world. We have a computer room that the girls, older girls, can go online and get information, which is really something that I think it was impossible for them to get information from. So we are working with against all the odds. And I think I'm really very positive person. I'm very, I really cannot give hope. And I always look forward working with these girls. But my concern, actually from last week, is so much about US negotiating with Taliban directly, the murderers, the killers of the American mothers and sons and daughters, and we've lost so many people. We have lost Afghans, we've lost Americans, we've lost international army, everybody from Canada, from everywhere, from Italy, from Switzerland, from wherever you say. So how can we fought for 12 years and now we are shaking hands with them directly, which I know these people will never do what they say. I think if there is any chance for the women or girls to get educated, I think you have to think 10 times before you negotiate with these murderers. I call them murderers because they put acid on girls, they cut their throats, they cut their nose for just going to school. They blow up vans when the girls are sitting in and going to a class or going to a school. What do you expect with them? They say that we are going to allow the women to work and the girls to go to school, but they have to do through Islamic rules. Well, you put a woman in a burqa and tell her to go to work. How is she going to communicate with any of her colleagues, men colleagues? She has to be behind a curtain. I don't know how this is going to work. I hope and I pray that you all are there. And I think it is such a loss. Whatever Afghanistan has gained, or the women have gained, or the girls have gained, even the boys, they will cut their throats. Coming from Bamiyan, I work in Bamiyan, college student coming on vacation, 5 of them, wearing jeans and little short sleeves. Taliban got them and cut their throat from the back. What do you expect from them? I think we have to speak up. It's still time for us to talk about this issue, which is very, very sensitive for, I think, life of women, life of girls in Afghanistan. It is crucial for us to look back at this negotiation or anything that we want to do with Taliban. We have to find a way to protect what we gained for these women, what we gained for these girls. It's over 7 million girls going to school. Any village, anywhere, whether they go for 1 hour, whether they are learning something or they are not learning something, but they are going somewhere. They are trying to learn something. I think it is so important. We've just started. It's just, you have planted a bush and it's just flowering. Please don't take it away. And we have to really work on this before it's too late and then we cannot go back. I think this is so important for every human being in the world to speak up. It's just not Afghanistan. It is women and children and girls of Afghanistan that are suffering, and we are trying to make a better life for them. And I don't see that this will continue if the Taliban comes in power and destroy what we have gained. I think there will never be a proper Afghanistan. There would be a society that we had in 1970s. There's nothing going to be again like that. We are struggling today to make life better for these women and children. And I think Richard spoke about the mortality rate. That is such a great, something that we have to work with. I work with an organization by name of Arizu. I've been there for 6 years. And we have a health program, we have an education program. I have 1,300 women that are working with me. They are carpet weavers. And since I have joined this organization and we are taking care of these women, we haven't lost one woman in childbirth, and we haven't lost one child when it's born. We take care of the mother, we take care of the child. We make sure they get their vaccines. We make sure the woman is healthy. So when we can do for 1,300 women, I'm sure that other people can do with big budgets, and they can do so much more and make life better for these women. And another point that Richard talked about is a lot of children. In Afghanistan, of course, there are sections and there are villages, and their main property or their heart and soul is in their children. And they don't see it, that whether they can feed them or not. All they do is they give birth. The woman is giving birth 12 children every year. And I think it's just that education is the only way that we can change this. And in my school, there are girls that are engaged, and they have asked their parents, please wait till I do my 12th grade and I'll get married. And these girls are now 19 and 20. So in 3 years when they graduate, I'm sure that she will be 23 years old. And that is the right age for her to get married, instead of 11 years old and 12 years old. And then they have children one after the other, and either they die or the child dies. So these are the things that we have to be practical. Really, we have to work together. And I think our American intention is amazingly great. The people are great. They have helped me so much to continue what I'm doing. And I think they are helping a lot of other organizations their best they can do. All we need to continue to help these children and these girls, and also the boys, really, because we can't leave them behind. And there has to be, they are thirsty for education, both girls and boys here. The young girls and boys, they try to go to different institutions. If one college doesn't take them, they will try something else. I think it is the best thing for us to really continue, help them, and keep in mind, please, for God's sake, keep the Taliban away from Afghanistan. I don't trust them, and I don't think so anybody else trusts them. So I beg America to really think before they go directly and negotiate with them, because that will be the most disaster thing in the world for the woman all over the world, really, for the children all over the world, for the boys, for the girls. You've seen what when they were rulers. Every day they stoned women. Every Friday it was fun for them in the stadium. Instead of a football game, they stoned a woman, whether because she wore a red socks or she went without a young person to buy some groceries for herself. She's a widow, so she was not allowed to come out of the house. She was not allowed to do anything. She was not allowed to get education. Now we are breathing, and I want this to continue. And we can't afford any kind of really disturbance among these kids. They are very scared. It's so hard for them to take one step. And let's make sure that they continue to go forward and make a life of themselves. I'm a very small part of this, but I want this. I have hope, and I want everybody else to have hope and to go forward and to make this their life better and their, I think, as they say, if there is an education in one person in a village, it's really, it makes the village, it makes the family. So we have to continue educating these girls, how much they can do, how we can help them. I need your help, and I please beg you to think about this and write to your senators, write to your legislators, and please ask for them to think. I think human right is very important, and I think people's voice speaks. When it speaks, it means something. And I think the more of us speak, the better we'll be, the better Afghanistan will be, the better the girls will be. And I hope that you all really make a note of this and do the best you can. Write to your friends on Facebook or Twitter them or do anything and ask them for help, because this thing is going to be a disaster. We've gone so far ahead, and we want to continue to make a better place for Afghan girls and women. I thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Rosie, for that very moving, inspiring, and also very cautionary presentation. I understand that we now have your your video ready to go, so we're going to see that right now.
Salam, چطور هستی؟ خوب هستی؟ Education is a gift that can never be taken away. The Zabuli School in the Subs, just about 45 minutes from the capital of Kabul, is the first girls' school in the history of these 7 villages. Our school stands out in Afghanistan for the high standards we have and the support we provide. Even though we are a private school, attendance is free and all materials are provided, including books, papers, meals, toys at recess, and even a pair of shoes so girls can walk safely to school. Many of them walk for miles to come to classes. We require nothing from the girls but their willingness to learn. They arrive every day with great energy. Since we opened our doors in 2008, we've grown more than I could ever imagine. Now in 2011, we have more students than ever. We are thrilled to see younger and older siblings of current students enrolling.
My name is Rahela.
My name is Marcel.
My name is Rubina.
The Zabuli School is a beacon of hope for the young women of the Subs, endowing them with a brighter future for generations to come. At the Zabuli School, we are making a difference, one girl at a time.
Okay, we now turn things over to Maiwand.
Good afternoon. It's quite difficult to talk after the moving speech that Rosie just delivered. And most Afghans in Afghanistan share her views and beliefs about negotiation with Taliban. I would like to thank the Wilson Center today for hosting and organizing such an important event on Afghanistan, and also a very timely event. It's timely because last few weeks, the stories that come out of Afghanistan is all about number of women, children, boys and girls being killed by suicide attacks by Taliban. And also, it's timely because just 3 days ago, the notorious office of Taliban was opened in Doha. But today, I would like to challenge the conventional and popular perceptions about Afghanistan and expose a deeper story, a story of commitment and determination, a struggle and success, a story of hope and change, a story of an emerging generation that strives to transform a war-torn country into a safer, more secure, and prosperous place to live. Determining whether Afghanistan is better off than it was, let's say, 5 years ago, is no doubt a tricky prospect that can be assessed from many different angles. Nonetheless, I'm here today to deliver a message that Afghanistan is a better place today than it was even 5 years ago. I'm not talking about Taliban time. Even comparing today with 5 years ago, when it comes to youth engagement, advocacy, and activism, Afghanistan is a better place. However, let's not be naive about past and current realities. While more than 70% of the population of Afghanistan are under 25 years of age, young people's voices and views are rarely heard, as well as their presence and mobility are curtailed by tradition and other restricting factors. Afghan society is conservative and hierarchical. Adults, by tradition, are presumed to speak for youth. And despite constituting overwhelmingly majority of the country, youth are not an influential constituency. Girls and young women continue to be particularly disadvantaged. They face additional challenges because of traditional disparities in gender roles and expectations. For example, as they enter puberty, girls and young women become increasingly subject to early forced marriage, social exclusion, departure from school, and gender-based violence. Unavailability or irrelevance of education, unemployment, poverty, particularly in rural areas, and a lack of meaningful civic participation in decision-making at the national and subnational level are among the key challenges facing youth in Afghanistan. With all these deeply rooted challenges, it's easy to believe that youth are pessimistic about the future, that they are divided along the ethnic lines, that it's impossible for Afghan youth to unite, mobilize, and influence the country's future. The challenges so often portrayed in Afghanistan are not always entirely off-base. They represent only a partial view, a limited and biased perspective that fails to understand the complexities of Afghanistan's environment. If we are serious in our commitment to Afghanistan, we must look more broadly at how youth engagement, advocacy, and civic activism is being transformed. This transformation is not something remote to me, not a detached narrative, but something which is tied to my own story, something that forced me to make my own very difficult decision. I returned to Afghanistan in 2009 after 2 years in the US for my master's degree on a Fulbright scholarship. I arrived home hopeful of contributing to the development of my country. After a year and a half, I began to believe that Afghanistan was moving backward. Corruption, human rights violation, and violence against women were all too commonplace. In that time, we had experienced a presidential election full of allegations of fraud and corruption. My dreams for a democratic, peaceful, and prosperous Afghanistan were fading quickly. I was hopeless, disappointed, and was contemplating leaving the country for good, despite having a very good job. A sense of fear, despair, and disappointment surrounded me. Fortunately, I was engaging on a regular basis with a number of friends and broader network of young Afghan entrepreneurs, business leaders, civil society activists, and government officials. I eventually realized something, that I was not alone, that my frustration was shared by many other Afghans. Even more profoundly, I realized that quitting and leaving Afghanistan was not by no means a sufficient solution. There simply was too much at stake. I knew at a fundamental level that genuine development in Afghanistan would only be possible if the new generation could collectively advocate for a common vision, values, and goals. It was that tension and energy that motivated me and my friends to establish Afghanistan 1400, a civil and political movement of the new generation. Movements like Afghanistan 1400 represent the aspirations of the new generation and speak to the increased sense of responsibility and activism among the youth. This and other similar movements are changing youth politics by providing a platform for a generation that ties their present and future to a stable and democratic Afghanistan, a generation that actively seeks to contribute to their community and country, a generation that views ethnic and linguistic diversities as a source of strength and richness, not a means of disruption and malcontent, a generation that wants Afghans to live with dignity and pride. Good governance requires that politics and activism be complemented by genuine policy and implementation measures. As an example of the progress being made in this area, the Afghan Youth National Policy is currently being crafted. In fact, tomorrow in Kabul, President Karzai will speak at a final conference which discusses and finalizes the Afghanistan's national youth policy. Briefly, the aim of the Afghan National Youth Policy is to convene relevant governmental and non-governmental organizations and stakeholders, in particular youth, to systematically address youth issues and to design and implement short-term, medium-term, and long-term strategies and programs for focusing on growth and expansion of talents, skills, and potential of young women and men in economic, social, cultural, and political areas of the country. Two things to quickly highlight about the implication of this policy. First, that such a policy exists solely focusing on youth development demonstrates a commitment by government and civil society to move from ideology to implementation. Second, that the policy was crafted with significant input by youth and enjoys a high level of acceptance across youth associations and interests around the country. Political activism and policy development are just part of the story. I would like to highlight some other areas of critical importance in the youth engagement and development conversation. We have seen significant progress in access to formal education, freedom of expression, and a much greater openness to views and new views and ideas. The number of youth graduating from national universities today is unprecedented in Afghanistan's history. On top of that, hundreds of youth have received graduate degrees from the best universities from around the world through programs such as the Fulbright Scholarship. When I see young women working full-time during the day and attending university classes in the evenings, I'm hopeful and proud that we're moving in the right direction. The long-term impact of such investment in human capital is incalculable, but anecdotally, we can see some of the short-term benefits. Many of Afghanistan's ministries are run by educated and dedicated young Afghan professionals. These ministries are among the most credible, popular, effective, and efficient government institutions. As a point of context, when I was a law school student under Taliban rule just over 10 years ago, girls were not allowed to even attend primary school, let alone work and attend university. Other areas of significant progress include freedom of expression and a flourishing media sector. The sector is predominantly led by prominent youth journalists and entrepreneurs. Additionally, youth are now viewing diversity, ideological, ethnic, and linguistic, as a source of strength and richness. They are moving together along common values, shared vision, and common concern. They know that there's so much at stake and that they need to mobilize to protect and build on the hard-earned achievement of the past decade. Most of my talk today has focused on government politics and policy, but we can't forget an important driver of progress in these areas, civil society. This is a sector which has seen tremendous individual and collective maturity over the past decade in Afghanistan. Afghan civil society is becoming more relevant, viable, vocal, and effective. Traditionally engaged in service delivery, particularly in areas that were out of government reach, Afghan civil society now is increasingly engaged in advocacy, influencing policy formulation and implementation, and voicing the needs and concerns of the citizen. Civil society fights for an inclusive peace process that does not compromise the hard-earned achievements of the past decade. They hold the government accountable, and they advocate for a transparent, free, and fair election. Again, we can't be naive to the challenges facing the civil society sector. It's largely donor-dependent, predominantly Kabul-centered, and can often be disconnected from their grassroots constituencies. But overall, their role in the development of Afghanistan is undeniable. I could write a PhD thesis on civil society in Afghanistan, but for today, I want to touch briefly on youth engagement in civil society and how it has been critical to the relative success of the sector. There are 2 points in particular that I want to make about youth engagement in civil society. First, youth civil society groups are largely organic. Young people come together out of passion for change and a desire to give back and contribute to the society. Thus, they come together and form organic and sustainable group of movements. Secondly, most youth-led civil society groups are not dependent on outside funding. In the past couple of years, there has been an increase in the number of youth civil society groups that have decided to not accept funding from international sources and rely on internal fundraising and volunteerism. Before I conclude my talk today, I want to point to a specific example of how youths have organized and mobilized both low and high-tech efforts to bring about positive change. The first example demonstrates how young people are leading the way to civic activism and nonviolent movements. Last month, around 80 Kabul University students went on a hunger strike for 7 days until the government accepted their demands for reform in the university. It was one of the rare peaceful protests in Afghanistan history and a beautiful example of how youthful energy, commitment, and organizational can lead to more positive outcomes. The second example centers on the use of social media to quickly spread the information and put pressure on government and institutions to react to public demand. In a number of instances, local warlords were physically abusing police officers in public display of power. Previously, there had been little recourse for the authorities or the public to document these happenings and punish the perpetrators. In response, the youth, on a number of occasions, uploaded images and videos to social media sites. It went viral, and the public outcry became so great that police authorities were forced to react. An effective, sustainable, and equitable development in Afghanistan is not possible without empowering and engaging youth. Governance structure and policies, both at a national and subnational level, should be reformed to address the needs of young people. An Afghan government and international stakeholders need to consider young people as valuable assets for development of the country. In addition to the security transition and the political transition in 2014, The other transition that is taking place in Afghanistan is the transition of responsibility of Afghanistan's leadership to a new generation. And the new generation is prepared to take charge. And it's an exciting and truly thing to be part of. I can't emphasize more on the importance of education for young men and women. Access to quality and equitable educational opportunities will transform Afghanistan. It already has. I just want to conclude that contrary to the conventional perceptions, Afghanistan is in the right path toward development and democracy. And supporting youth engagement is central to the success of this journey. Most Afghans, the youth, the new generation, regards the progress of the past decade as the foundation for an even brighter future. And this is a time for even greater engagement of the world in Afghanistan. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for another very inspiring presentation. There's a lot to discuss. I think these three presentations have really set things up for a very nice debate. So as we start this Q&A period, I will abuse my privilege as the chair and throw out a bit of a broad question out to the three of you, which you could feel free to address as you like, whoever would like to address it. I'm going to ask you to speculate. I know it's never easy to ask anyone to speculate, but I'm going to do it anyway. The conference title today is in part Beyond the Headlines. One major headline that we are seeing a lot of, hearing a lot about these days, is basically what happens after 2014, though much of this debate tends to focus on what will become of the security situation. Not in the headlines is really the question of what about the situation beyond security after 2014. And we've heard bits and pieces from most of you this afternoon, but my question is essentially what can we expect, what might we expect for the social sector? Does Afghanistan have the ability to maintain the achievements that it's made in civil society, for example, and in other youth-related areas? Can we expect there to be a balance to be struck between, for example, foreign assistance and sustainable Afghan-led initiatives? So I'll kick things off with that question. And I believe that everyone is, you two here are mic'd up, so everyone can hear you, and Rosie, of course, can be heard as well. You could respond from there.
What is it?
Right?
Well, thank you. Very good question. I think, the security transition and the withdrawal of international troops in Afghanistan, I think it's overrated a bit. I believe Afghanistan is, as I explained in my presentation, is moving toward the right direction, and if the transition of international military assistance as well as the anticipated reduction in international aid in Afghanistan is managed orderly and gradually, I think the impact on the country will not be that significant. I was in a meeting once a few months ago in Kabul, and somebody told me, what's going to happen after 2014? And my response was, well, people will stop talking about it. I think it's a bit oversimplifying the situation, but I think this idea of 2014 and the transition and the withdrawal of forces and all of that has become a bit toxic, and it's important, I think, for now, that we communicate the message that despite the transition, I think the more important transition that's taking place is the political transition in Afghanistan, the upcoming election, and on the gains that we have made past 10, 12 years, and can we sustain that should the transition happen? I think it depends on the commitment of the international community in Afghanistan post-2014, and to what extent they would like to be engaged in Afghanistan and support the Afghan people, the civil society, the Afghan citizens in maintaining the achievement of the past decades. If they do the mistake they did 20 years ago and left Afghanistan by itself in the hands of the our neighbors, which are not so friendly with us. I think we're gonna the risks are high that we may lose the achievements we've made so far. But if they stay committed, engaged, and support Afghan people, I think Afghanistan is in the right direction. And now with the level of civic activism and engagement of Afghanistan population, I think we are able to sustain the achievements.
Anyone else want to weigh in? Okay. All right, I'll open it up to you. I'll have 2 microphones on each side of the auditorium, I believe. So if you could wait for the microphone to arrive before answering your question, and if you could identify yourself and your affiliation, that would be great. And also, we have a fair amount of time, but if you could keep your question to 1, that would be ideal as well. So let's start. To see a show of hands for questions. Okay, let's start right down here.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here and for this conference. My name is Max, and I'm from the Middle East Institute. My question goes to Richard, and you've mentioned that states with high numbers of young people tend to have less probability for a free democracy, with the exceptions of Mali and Senegal. And I was just gonna ask if there are like studies on Senegal and Mali that we could maybe benefit from and see how did they overcome this problem and then try to apply these features in Afghanistan as well. So yeah, that's pretty much my question. Thank you.
Where was Max? I kind of tried to. Oh, there you are. Sorry. Okay. Well, thank you for that question. That is the objective of much of political demography, is to see where those outliers are. But quite frankly, many of the sub-Saharan African countries, at least the equatorial countries, have been there and didn't last for that long. And Mali lasted nearly a decade, but ultimately it fell as a liberal democracy. Its chances for getting back there are are at least challenged. And Senegal's been there several times. If you have to look around the world for countries that have made very high levels of democracy with age structures like very youthful age structures, you have to look far and wide. And there are a few, and Costa Rica, Jamaica are the 2 examples. They're small countries. There may be some more that will actually push through and end up in that class, and that is Botswana and I'm trying to think what it is. Anyway, there's another small country, I can't remember what it is. But Belize, I'm sorry, Belize. So the chances of a country the size of, say, of Pakistan and Afghanistan they're limited, and pushing democracy to very high levels tends to end up in a failure where they drop to some other score for one reason or another, and the reasons are myriad. It's just a general model. An exception is India, where it was given a democracy very early and it pushed on through with this model, but falling twice to lower levels and enduring a great deal of violence in the interim. And maybe its future will look better now that it's maturing, but it still has areas, because it's a large country, has areas that are not only very youthful, but also very problematic and politically violent. So, returning to Afghanistan, it doesn't condemn Afghanistan to not be able to make it, but the challenge is just so great that what it takes is these kinds of efforts, perhaps in a small level and at a low level, to mobilize civil society and work slowly over a long period of time. Because if I showed the map of where Afghanistan is going, it's a long route out there. And I think the Afghanis that have spoken here and have spoken to me before are well aware of that. This is not an easy road. And as for what's going to happen afterwards, I can't tell, that's for sure. I was waiting for some comment from both of my co-panelists, but there is certainly an enormous amount of risk from pulling away from Afghanistan, and I don't think everybody is aware of that. The strides that have been made, they may seem that they haven't gotten that far when you look at the statistics, but they are radically different from when, as Marwan said, from 5 years ago. There's been a lot of people who have sacrificed to get that far, and we've heard some of that story already. To me, pulling completely away doesn't seem like a good idea. And of course, that's a personal opinion, but even from an analytical point of view, it means maybe that even though we're not there, or a well-meaning neighbor, few of them there are, I realize that, but even if they are engaged and watching out, it may mean that somebody else is going to get in there again. This is sort of the history of Afghanistan, where there's been so much instability and so much meddling as well, that it isn't long before the next generation faces the problems that they endure now, the violence and instability and the inability of a government to transcend old established orders to put in place something that is lasting and representative. So I'll just leave there that I have very great concerns about moving away from Afghanistan, and I think everybody in the administration and Congress does as well.
Okay, next question. Yep, let's go right, yes.
Thank you. My name is Paulette Lee. I'm a communications consultant. First of all, Richard, I feel that I need to say I was somewhat offended by your presentation. I guess I understand what you were trying to do, but it's difficult to have to hear that the importance of women needs to be defended within a context other than simply the fact that we're human beings. And I also heard two different descriptions of Afghanistan. One that was very optimistic about the youth movement, and the other that seemed a little bit more from the ground perspective. And I'm wondering, Razia, what is your impression of what I just heard, or how I expressed what I heard? Thank you.
Should I?
I think it's somewhat puzzling when you hear, on the high level, their vision is very different than when you are in Afghanistan and when you are dealing with people and when you are really trying to make an effort to give education to, or just opportunity to, women and girls. I think it's a very kind of I think what in my view is that, I don't think so. It's for the past 2 years, what has happened really, you don't see American soldiers on the road. They come very early in the morning if they have a project, and they come back very late at night. But during the day, it's all Afghans. It's Afghan police, it's Afghan military, if whatever it is. And right now, last week, they handed over all the security, everything to Afghans. So on the face, In Afghanistan, you see the Afghans that are really trying to do the security and do the checkup and do if there is a problem. But of course, in the background, you know, Americans not going to leave. They are going to be here. And they are going to give full support in the background for Afghan people and Afghan government and Afghan institute. You know, whatever you can see, the improvement that has done is because of America. I think that they are supporting different organizations. They are giving, I mean, USAID is amazing. It's helping all over Afghanistan. So, you know, it's not showing up because there was so much disaster. And now slowly you can see, well, over 7 million girls are going to school. There are schools building, there are clinics building, there's Aga Khan Foundation, there's USAID. So you can see these things. Of course, with all these things, there's tremendous amount of corruption. There's tremendous amount of, I mean, it's just, it chokes you. It chokes you literally to go one step ahead. So these are the things that the people have to really correct. And I think, in my point of view, Afghanistan will go forward the day that it says, thank you, I had enough, help somebody else. Because right now, everybody's for themselves because of the situation, because of they've gone through what they've gone through.
Rich, you want to respond?
Yeah, thank you for your question. Being offended, many people are offended at what I have to say. Okay, so, but that's not, that's fine, quite frankly. I don't mind it because I am shaped by a set of sort of life experience. One of them being that I taught school, a girls' school in Kenya, in the west of Kenya. It wasn't as under such duress as Razia has had to face, but it, to a great extent, shaped how I felt about societies and what women's participation meant in it. Now, I also ended up feeling that I felt that there must be something more to what I am thinking than just that they deserve it, because clearly other people believe that they don't. And that's not to say that those people are stretched out across some other part of the world. They're here as well. So that's why I showed that first slide, because I can't say that that particular analyst who made that speech and makes speeches like that is alone in what they feel. They wonder why we are extending ourselves and risking American lives and treasure to get girls to school or to make societies open up to women. So you got to go beyond that. Just not only for my own personal reasons, but for the sake of having some kind of voice in how policymakers feel. So for that reason, I just got rid of, I just believe that, although I'm a great believer in human rights and I believe that we haven't gone wrong establishing them, I basically pull away from them. I just don't, let's face it, they're made up. And thank God they are. But there's got to be more. And so, I mean, I didn't come into political demography all that reason. It actually just looks like this is the case, believe it or not. You can do the analysis in different ways, and it's very difficult to actually disaggregate the involvement of women, their fertility. Very often, feminists don't like that I speak about it, but their fertility, their education, their involvement in economics, they're also heavily linked. You just cannot take them apart statistically or in a narrative, as much as people try to do, and either because of their disciplines or because of what they believe. So me throwing these into a statistical package all the time teaches me something, that really age structure matters and what's below it matters in terms of economics and education and fertility. And very few countries can get to where they need to be to become a state without moving that along. So you take a look at the age structural transition, and you can't deny it. All that we think of that Westphalian state that people talk about in Washington, where does it succeed? It succeeds in the middle of that transition. And Afghanistan is not there yet. And it's going to be a long time before it does. Now it looks like it's going to be actually quite a bit shorter than we thought so. So when it gets there, because of the work that people do on the ground as much as the work that the changes that countries enact in terms of their policies and the differences that their neighbors and those who extend aid to them, if it can move along, then it's got the chance that other states have as well. It's not because there's nothing different about it. That's the great lesson of political demography, is you can look all over the world in countries that people thought would, they can never make democracy, or they can never achieve any kind of markets, economy. All those things we can throw out the window because they're not true. We look at countries that make it to the middle of the transition, and all of a sudden, they become those states that we thought were the product of the West, the product of Western development, we used to call it. Well, there's so many reasons why that we now know that isn't true. And one of them, I think the big reason is the decline in fertility, the participation of women, and the movement of infrastructure.
Okay, yes, question, woman in the red.
Hello, my name is Simin, and I'm a student at Eastern Mennonite University and doing an internship with Democracy International. So I would like to say that, of course, we are very happy that USA has helped or supported Afghanistan, especially women. But we should also hold USA responsible for what happened to Afghanistan, especially to women in Afghanistan. To be honest, the misery of women started in late 1980s when USA trained warlords in Pakistan to go and fight Soviet unions in Afghanistan. Since then, women have been going through so much. So if now USA again says that this is not our responsibility, we are just doing a favor to Afghanistan, this will be another mistake that they have already done. So my request is, please, as Rosie brought this into everyone's attention, I just want to emphasize that USA should take responsibility, and they shouldn't let this to go and to let women go back to their houses or go through so many other violences before they say that, oh, we should interfere or we should help. So that was my comments, and also, and my question is, sorry, because I'm so emotional right now. So my question is, I don't really, when we talk about problems in Afghanistan, violence against women in Afghanistan, we only talk about Taliban. So there are other warlords that we never talk about. And they have been getting so much support from the US right now. So what do you think about that? Thank you.
Anyone want to address that? It's a good point. Okay.
I think
Could be
it's
taken
just
up.
not yeah, I could maybe say a little bit, but it's really it's warlords, and because they are in power and they can do anything to a family and destroy them literally from the whole family. They can do that, and they can afford it, and there's nobody to ask them. Another thing is that really the violence is very much in the family. In the family, you know, it's just such a big family. It's the uncles, the grandfather, the father, the brothers, the stepbrothers. And when there is an issue of a girl going to school, they have to face just not the parents or just not the mother and father, but they have to literally have a jirga. And if the community says that this girl is not allowed to go to school, the parents cannot allow that girl to go to school. I mean, I have had so many girls facing this problem because they are stopped. And in many cases, because these girls have come to me, now she's 20 years old. She's come to me when she was maybe 12 years old, and she's been in school for 6 years. Believe me, this girl has come to school with broken nose, broken forehead, because they have beaten her up and told her she cannot go to school. But against all odds, her father wants her to come to school. So she came to school, and she's coming to school with all the problems. There are many, many problems for these girls. I will tell you one story, which is a girl who is in third year. She just finished third year in Georgia Tech. Full scholarship. For 3 years, she went from one of the south part of, I don't want to name the place. She went to school there. Nobody knew except her father, her mother, her sisters. 3 years she went to school. This year she came back to home, and somehow her stepbrother came to know. And she is not allowed to go back and finish her fourth year because they say it's a shame. She's going to US, and there are thousands of cases that are happening with these girls and these women. So it is something, warlord is on one hand, Taliban on another hand, and then the family, then the community, then the shura. They choke these people, they choke these girls. So we have to really look at this all problems that they have, and still we can see the progress, and still we can see that these girls are going to school. So I think we have to help them. We have to not take them back 12 years back when Taliban was there. Please, just that is something that we have to continue to go forward and allow these girls and these women to work and girls to go to school. I think that is the best thing we can do.
Okay, there's a question all the way in the back, a gentleman right on the end on the aisle there.
First, I want to thank you, everybody, first, on behalf of Afghan people, if I may allow myself to say that we are grateful for the sacrifice and efforts of our friends and allies. And saying that does not mean that we start defining the history of a country just because of our own projects, and think that we should not forget Afghanistan is the front line, and we paid the highest price, not for our own sake. Afghanistan did not need the technology and the sophisticated weaponry, in fact, to defend their own enemy or to fight their own enemy. So I think the history of Afghanistan is the proof of that one, that we have never needed that. We paid the highest price just for the safety and security of the world community. In fact, that you would safely would have your presentations, and fighting in Hindu Kush was in your benefit and your interest rather than fighting in Washington, D.C. or London. We should not forget that one. So when we consider some kind of achievements of women's rights, education, and all these, we should consider that we are speaking about Afghanistan, a newborn democracy for the past 10 years. The point is, it is disturbing sometimes that we speak about a nation that who has thousands and thousands of years of history. An assessment is not like this, that, okay, the achievement of women is today that one at risk, or we have warlords, or we have Taliban. The commitment of the United States is not that one. As I agree with our sister, the commitment is not that one, that by ammunitions or by money you would stand with us. You cannot define the enemy. The enemy is the same enemy, your enemy and my enemy. Let's talk that honestly, that we are fighting the same enemy. And that way we could find out the solution. Not like this, that we are having sessions and sessions and we are criticizing and we are analyzing, but we are defining the enemy. The enemy is Taliban. We are, as Ambassador Jawad, former Ambassador Jawad, who is here in Washington, was talking that there is no lack of courage, but lack of expertise in Afghanistan. That expertise does not mean that I would not live with that basic life that I have. That expertise, because that enemy that I used to work for the government, our Ministry of Foreign Affairs or Ministry of Defense did not have a Twitter account that time. So expertise does not mean that you would provide me some kind of technology. You would provide me the technology that I could fight that enemy who is your enemy and my enemy. My point is here that most of the sessions we are having first, we are not talking about solutions right now. We are talking that, okay, achievement is challenged, the women are not going to schools, or the education is challenged and everything. The problem is that we are sending mixed messages to Afghan people. Opening the office or defining the enemy, that is a mixed message sending to Afghan girls, Afghan families, that they were investing, they were relying on you. So we should, in fact, try to understand the languages we are using, because the people are just listening what you say, listening that who is the enemy, and your mission is complete, done, 2014, the heavy schedule that you're talking. It is disappointing. We need to cry, in fact. We need to challenge our own institution. This 10 years, you did it that well, not for me. I should not be the one to come and thank every American soldier here. I'm thanking everybody for the peace and prosperity. So my point is, again, back this one. From this microphone that I'm announcing that mixed messages are sending your lives, your man and woman on the front line would die for nothing, because they would question you. Was it worth it, in fact, all those sacrifices that now you're defining the enemy once again? Thank you very much for the efforts and for organizing this.
Okay, we have a time for about one or two more questions. So let's come on to this side of the room, and actually let's take these two questions consecutively. Two people sitting next to each other, man and woman.
Thank you very much for your presentation. This question is for Maywand. In your opinion, Maywand, what is the potential of civil society and civil society leaders to effectively advocate for issues opposed by more conservative forces? And go ahead.
No, you finish.
And if you can provide some examples.
Okay, and mine is kind of similar. I've been involved with Afghanistan since 1988 in the camps, and I was with the UN in Herat during early Taliban times, and I was most recently, we both were in Paktika. To me, during early Taliban times, there was a time period where negotiation and dealing with them might have made them a different movement than what they are today. During early warlord times, there was the same kind of a flux where things could have happened differently than what they did, and then what we did caused them to be what they are. I think right now, with the youth movements and with the certain things happening among civil society, that there is a flux in the entire society that can change it in positive ways. And my question is that possible, and is that something that could happen with our intervention?
Thank you.
Okay, I will take the second question first. I think you're right. So what has happened in Afghanistan, especially in the past 3 to 4 years, is there's a growing sense of responsibility among Afghans. This is predominantly among youth, but even if you look at the older generation and the provinces, what I see in my work with civil society, with youth movements, that Afghanistan, while they're concerned about the withdrawal of international forces from Afghanistan and other possible implication of those withdrawals, but in the meantime, they're feeling more responsible, that they need to get together and decide their own destiny. So I think in the upcoming 2 years, and you're going to see a lot of grassroots forces and movements of Afghans trying to get together to change the situation in their own society, in their own community, in their provinces. However, just wanted to clarify my comments earlier. What's happening in Afghanistan now with the transition and the 2014 withdrawal of troops is that it's giving a message to the Afghan population that, you know, this is the end of Afghanistan. And with the withdrawal of troops, you know, the warlords or the Taliban will come back to power, and that the whole country will slide back to civil war or the Taliban rules. I think the problem is the communication of the message. I think, as we all talked, there seems to be, even after 2014, the international community will still be engaged in Afghanistan, and there will be a minimum level of troops in Afghanistan and a lot of political and economic engagement. But unfortunately, that message is not transformed clearly to the Afghan population. And this debate of the 2014 transition has become a bit challenging because it is as perceived as it's end of the intervention and the cooperation of international community. In terms of a civil society engagement, you know, it depends on how we define civil society. We have the modern civil society, which is civil society organizations, registered organization with the staff, with programs, and some of them with donor funding that implements program in Afghanistan, and they're predominantly Kabul-based, and then we have the traditional Afghan civil society, the shuras, the jirgas, and other forms of civil society groups in Afghanistan that has been in Afghanistan for years and years. So, and sometimes there are areas that they sort of converge, and that there are values, goals that are shared between the traditional civil society and the more modern civil society. And then there are times that you know, an issue is particularly when it comes to women's rights, informal justice, that sometimes you see that, you know, the values of the modern civil society is not the same as the beliefs and the values of the traditional society. And there's been a lot of effort try to you know, work with more traditional civil society groups so that they slowly understand and respect the international and best practices, standards, and the values that they should respect. But while there have been progress, I think we have a long way to go to make sure that the Afghan civil society can work with traditional societies and the communities and grassroots to ensure that they uphold the values that the more modern civil society believes in.
Rosie or Rich, did you want to add any final words before we adjourn? Uh-oh, it sounds like we lost Razia.
Hello. I just want to thank you all, and I think it's very late for us. It's about, I have to travel a little bit to go home, and it's kind of close to midnight. And I thank you all, and I think, I hope that at least we made people a little bit aware of what's going on. I'm very much hopeful, and I hope that, you know, one day Afghanistan will be really Afghanistan like when I grew up here. So we hope, and we want to give all the opportunity to girls and women in here in Afghanistan. We have to hold hands, doesn't matter what color it is, what size it is, and we have to work together. Thank you so much. I appreciate being one of you, and thank you for all your help. Thank you so much.
Yeah, let me just conclude with how I started. There clearly are very differing narratives on Afghanistan. Neither is wrong, and I think both are in many ways right. And I think to the credit of this panel, we've been able to bring these different perspectives together. So I think that's terrific. We're going to start panel 2 in just a moment or two, so I guess I'll invite the participants in panel 2 to come up. And in the meantime, let's give another round of applause for our 3 speakers. Thank you.
You can go. Yeah, where's that girl? Poor girl.
Thank you. I see your
somebody will
it's a
be-
good point how Afghans see the whole 2014 issue.